Okay, folks, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone, first of all. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on these applications. And just a couple of reminders I have. All guests, please take a seat in the first floor gallery, which it looks like we have. We live stream this meeting on our YouTube channel, and the recording is available after the meeting. Because meetings are accessible to the public in all of these ways, video or audio recording by members of the public is not permitted in council chambers. This is to ensure that all attendees and those who come to make a deputation feel at ease. So thank you for your cooperation. And to start things off, I will introduce the Committee of Adjustment. First of all, we have Mr. Finn. We have Mr. Strangway. Mr. Erickson, Ms. Archer, Ms. Richardson, and I, Mr. Robertson. And staff, we have the Manager of Planning, Mr. Conley. We have Planner 2, Mr. Shahid. Planner 2, Ms. Evans. Mr. Lahe, our Secretary Treasurer. Ms. Crockford, our Recording Secretary. And Mr. McKinnon, who is the Supervisor of Plans, Review, and Inspections. Welcome. All right, to get things started here, are there any comments or questions with respect to the motion, or the agenda on the floor? All right, being none, can I get a motion then to approve the agenda as printed? Mr. Strangway, Ms. Archer, no further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Excuse me. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Mr. Finn?
Chair, I filed a declaration of pecuniary interest with regard to item 3.1.2 on the agenda.
All right, and I would ask as a result of your declaration that you leave the council chambers while we're discussing that application?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. The minutes of the last meeting, are there any comments or questions before I ask for a motion? Being none, can I get a motion to adopt those minutes as printed? Ms. Richardson, Mr. Finn, any further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, for the benefit that everyone is here, and I'm sure there are probably folks online as well, the committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting, those are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff, then the applicant or his or her agent. We will then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. Finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. If you wish to speak, and I will ask if there's the applicant wishes to speak, or if there's someone here wishing to support or oppose the application, please raise your hand. I'll ask you to come to the podium there. There's a button and you'll get a red light, and that way we can hear you on the microphone. And online, when you appear, I would appreciate you stating your name for us so we know who we're talking to. And for those who wish to speak, the committee will afford you 10 minutes to make your presentation. No one has ever come close to that, but every so often, I suppose, there may be someone who feels they just can't get it all in within those 10 minutes. So if you can't, I will ask the committee if they will afford you a couple of more minutes. But generally speaking, we're well below the Mr. Erickson.
I was just going to say, this would probably be a good time to tell people that there's a change of time next month.
Well, we can do that. Just simply because of circumstances beyond our control. The meeting for September 26th, is it? Am I close? Oh, right for once today. All right, September the 26th, we'll be starting at 2 p.m. rather than 1. So for anyone that's here or online that may be attending the meeting in September, please be advised. All right. Having said all that, all right. We're dealing with file number D20-2024-063, and this is 75 Campbell Beach Road, Geographic Township of Carden. Ms. Evans, you're on.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, within which residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted. The property is zoned rural residential type 2 zone under the Township of Carden zoning bylaw 79-2. The subject property is located on the eastern shore of Dalrymple Lake. It is rectangular in shape and currently contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1955 and 3 sheds. There was previously a tent storage structure, being a carport, on the property, which was to be removed as per condition 3 of the report. And since the writing of the report, the tent storage structure has been removed. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a detached garage, which is to provide storage space as well as space for a workshop for the property owner. The purpose of the application is to recognize 2 existing sheds that are located in the front yard also. Relief is required from section 14.1b of the zoning bylaw, which provides that accessory structures are permitted in the interior side or rear yard. The proposed garage is to be located in the front yard, and 2 existing sheds are currently located in the front yard. Section 14.1c1 of the zoning bylaw, which permits a maximum lot coverage for accessory structures of 8%. The proposed accessory structure lot coverage is 13%. The dwelling is set back approximately 50 meters from the front lot line, making the majority of the subject property the front yard. Limited space in the interior side yards and the minimum water setback make siting an accessory structure in a location that is compliant with the provisions of the zoning bylaw challenging. The elevations of the proposed garage can be seen here. Locating the proposed garage in the front yard also allows for close proximity to the driveway and entrance for vehicle access to the garage. Here we have a view of the property from the street, as well as a photo of the location of the proposed garage. Due to the slope of the property, the dwelling, as well as the 2 existing sheds in the front yard, are minimally visible from the road. The proposed garage is located towards the southern lot line, maintaining the existing visibility of the residential use from the road. The southern lot line contains a stand of mature vegetation, and its thickness and height provides visual screening between the proposed garage location and the neighboring property to the south. The proposed garage complies with the minimum front yard setback and will not result in impacts to traffic, road maintenance, or sight lines. There are several properties along Campbell Beach Road that have garages in the front yard, so the proposal is in keeping with the existing built form. This slide contains photos of the existing accessory structures, the elevation of the proposed garage, and then a photo of the dwelling for context. There's no maximum number of accessory structures under the zoning bylaw, so only a percentage is used to manage the number and size of accessory structures. The existing and proposed accessory structures are dispersed throughout the property, maintaining visual balance and avoiding a cluttered appearance. The existing and proposed accessory structures and the resulting lot coverage are not anticipated to change the character of the property. Additionally, the total maximum lot coverage for all buildings and structures is 30%, and the proposal results in a total lot coverage of 22%. Using MPAC data, detached garages located in the front yard were identified along Campbell Beach Road, including garages ranging from 75 square meters to 177 square meters. As such, the garage will not be out of character with the existing built form. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems reviewed the proposal and has no concerns with the approval of the minor variance. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. Comments were received from the owners of 71 Campbell Beach Road regarding the potential use of the property for a business, potential use of a travel trailer for habitable space, the 2 existing sheds in the front yard and their setback from the side lot line, and the garbage storage structure located at the edge of the road being on the 71 Campbell Beach Road side of the survey post. The use of a property for a non-permitted use or the use of a travel trailer for habitable space should be reported and investigated by municipal law enforcement. I've printed and provided a document with the photos provided by the neighboring property owners that go with their comments. So it's the photo document that is in the portrait orientation. I did discuss the comments with the owners of the subject property, and they moved the garbage storage structure to their side of the property line. They removed the overhang on the wooden shed that wasn't in compliance with the side yard setback, and they also adjusted the location of the metal shed so it too complies with the side yard setback. And additionally, as I mentioned, since we did the site visit, the tarp storage structure has been removed. The property owners took photos of these changes, which I printed out and have been provided, and it's the photo document just in the landscape orientation. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Committee, are there questions of the planner? Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner. Can you tell me, please, if the applicants are the owners of their portion of the shore road allowance?
Through the chair, I did reach out to Realty Services to get an answer to that. I didn't receive a concrete answer, but they were circulated on the minor variance application, so they did have opportunity to comment if they had any concerns, and they did not.
Further questions of the planner? Being none, is the applicant here or online? Yes, sir. Do you wish to speak to the application? All right. Let me ask this, and are there any questions of the applicant from committee? Ms. Archer, please come forward, sir. We have a question for you. Find the button there if you can, the red light. State your name.
Rob Reed.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Archer.
I just wanted to ask you, please, have you purchased the shoreline road allowance, your section of that 60-foot road allowance?
No, ma'am.
You have not?
No.
Thank you. So
No.
then back to the planner, will something further be done?
Through the chair, I don't think a minor variance would be the appropriate route to have anything done, just because the garage is not going on the shore road allowance. It's going on the property that's owned by the property owner. If Realty Services does come back after the fact and says they have some kind of concern, I'll definitely connect them with the property owner, but I don't think it would be appropriate to attach any kind of conditions.
All right. Further of the applicant? Committee? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application, opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Archer?
As printed with the removal of condition 3.
All right, and seconded by Mr. Strangway. Are you content with that? All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, so we're looking at the motion as amended. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We won't need our recorded vote today. We don't have anyone online, so. All right, moving right along. We're dealing with file number D20-2024-064. And this is 33 Douglas Drive, Geographic Township of Laxton. Thank you, Mr. Finn. Go ahead, Mr. Shahid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated in the former township of Laxton on the shore of Head Lake with access from Douglas Drive. The subject property currently contains a vacation dwelling, 2 gazebos, a cabin, which is also referred to as a bunkie, 3 sheds, and a detached garage. The minor variance at hand seeks to recognize the 2 gazebos, the cabin, and the 3 sheds. To provide some on-site context with this application, on the slide is shown the structures subject to this application. These structures have either been existing for an undetermined time, were replaced and rebuilt, or have been constructed newly by the current property owners. More information and context on these structures is provided on page 3 of the report. None of these structures are used or to be used for human habitation other than the existing cabin. Moving to this next slide, due to the lot's topography and existing vegetation, none of the structures are visible from the road to the public. The property slopes down as you go towards the shoreline where majority of the existing structures and dwelling are located. It is important to mention here that because of how close the existing dwelling is to the shoreline, it makes locating any accessory structure in the rear yard difficult. With respect to visibility from the lake, the structures can be seen are the existing cottage, the gazebos, and very minimally the boat supply shed as shown on the picture on the slide. Even so, these structures are not fully visible due to the existing tree canopy hanging above the shoreline. Moving to this last slide here, I'm just going to leave on the slide here to show some examples of other lots in the area with waterfront onto Head Lake. These are examples of similar distances of build form near the shoreline. Lastly, I want to briefly go over how the rural zoning bylaw would treat some of these structures. The rural zoning bylaw is under appeal, so anything I mention about this is not in effect and just for comparative purposes. This is explained in the report as well, more in detail. But the rural zoning bylaw has introduced a shoreline activity area, which essentially dedicates a portion of the land along a shoreline to a naturalization buffer. Now, within this buffer, the rural zoning bylaw permits shoreline structures. These shoreline structures wouldn't be subject to a minimum water setback, and the rural zoning bylaw actually gives some examples of these shoreline structures, and it gives the examples of a dock, a hot tub, an outdoor sauna, and storage sheds. As a result, I believe all of the structures currently subject to needing relief from the water setback wouldn't require relief under the rural zoning bylaw. With respect to comments received after the report, the supervisor of Part 8 sewage system stated that they have no issue with the application as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. The Kawartha Conservation stated that they have no concern with approval of the application and that a permit will not be required. Comments were also received from various public members. One email was sent by the property owners of 28 Douglas Drive and co-signed by 6 other property owners in the area. The comments were in support of the application, and the full email was forwarded prior to this meeting to our committee members. Another email was received from the property owner of 35 Douglas Drive, who had concerns pertaining to the number of buildings and setbacks. To respond briefly to this, there's no maximum number of accessory structures applicable in the zoning bylaw. There is a maximum accessory structure lot coverage and total lot coverage, which the property complies with. With respect to their concerns over the setback of the storage shed, or structure number 6, the applicant has indicated that it is set back 3.5 meters from the neighboring side lot line, which is in compliance with the 1.3 meter zoning requirement. That's it for public comments. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Ms. Arger.
Through you, please, to the planner. I may have missed it when you were talking and I was trying to find my spot here, but is there a reason we haven't captured the dwelling itself as being too close and including it with all the other water setbacks?
The dwelling is an existing structure that predates the zoning bylaw.
Not some of these small things the same? They're older and they predate?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the structures that are actually subject to this application, more detail is given to that on page 3 of the report, but a majority of them, they're either, so for example, gazebo number 2 was replaced in 2002. The cabin has been existing, but we don't know for how long it has been existing. The boat supply shed was replaced in 1996, and the rest of the structures were all constructed after the passing of the zoning bylaw. So the structures in question, we either don't know how long they've been existing, which is one of them, which is the bunkie. So that's why it's being provided relief here. And the rest of the structures were replaced or just fully constructed after the passing of the zoning bylaw.
We do know that the cottage was there pre-bylaw.
Yes, the cottage was, through you, Mr. Chair, apologies. The cottage itself, as per page 3 of the report, was constructed in 1964.
Anything further from committee to the planner? All right, is the applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to speak to the application? Are there any questions of the applicant from committee? All right, thank you. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support, or here online, or here wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Richardson.
As recommended.
All right. Do I have a seconder, Mr. Erickson? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Your application is approved, ma'am. And moving right along, we're now dealing with oh yeah, all right. Well, we can carry on while he's seated. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-065, and this is 64 Shadow Lake Road, 18, Geographic Township of Somerville. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. Under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan, the property is designated waterfront, and it is zoned limited service residential zone under the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45. The property is located on the eastern shore of Silver Lake and contains a single detached dwelling, a cabin, and a shed. The proposal is to construct an attached screened porch onto the water side of the existing dwelling. Relief is required from section 5.2F of the zoning bylaw. The minimum water setback is 15 meters, and the proposed setback to the porch is 8 meters. Here we have photos of the shoreline as well as the rear yard of the property. Under the official plan, residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. The intent of the official plan is to establish a water setback to provide a buffer, as well as to protect water body health and habitat. As the dwelling is already within the water setback, the proposed porch does not introduce habitable space into the water setback where it does not already exist, so it does not create a new hazard. And it is not anticipated that the screened porch will impact the existing shoreline conditions. These photos show the existing setbacks between the deck and the shoreline, and the screened porch is to maintain the setbacks of the deck. From the closest point, the existing dwelling is actually closer to the shoreline than the proposed screened porch, so no further encroachment is proposed beyond what already exists. It's not anticipated the porch will increase the risk associated with human habitation being in the water setback, and its location is not anticipated to impact existing shoreline conditions, infiltration, or water body health. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems reviewed the proposal and has no concerns. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. Comments were received from a neighboring property owner, Warren Brown, of 70 Shadow Lake Road 18, stating that he and his family have no objection and support the requested minor variance. No other comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? All right, being none. Is the applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to speak to it, ma'am? No. Are there any questions of the applicant? Being none. Is there anyone here online, excuse me, wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Mr. Strangway.
As recommended by staff.
And seconded by Mr. Finn. Excuse me. All right. Motion on the floor. Any comments or questions? All right, being none, all those in favor? And that carries. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-066, and this is 83 Paradise Road, Geographic Township of Eldon. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated on the shoreline of Canal Lake with access from Paradise Road. The subject property currently contains a 1.5-story dwelling with a boathouse. To provide some context here, prior to the existing dwelling being constructed in 2023, there was a dwelling that was existing since the 1950s that was there until the current structure was placed. When the proposal was submitted for what is currently on the property, the plan detailed all compliant setbacks. However, it was later discovered through a revised survey report that the structure is deficient in its compliance with zoning requirements. As a result, the application seeks to recognize the existing single detached dwelling and rear deck. With respect to the neighborhood, based on data collected from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, the dwellings in this area were constructed through the mid to late 1900s. Many of these properties have now gone through various extensive renovations, alterations, and additions, some going through complete redevelopments more recently in the last 20 years. The proposed water setback, although deficient, aligns with the existing character of the neighborhood. As seen on the aerial imagery on the slide, a non-compliant water setback is not uncommon in this area. These structures on the slide all appear to be less than 15 meters from their respective shorelines. Looking closer at the subject property, the existing dwelling and deck are further away than the specified setback from the majority of the shoreline. However, there is an existing inlet along the shoreline that serves as a space for canoe launching, which brings the water much closer to the built form on the subject property. The existing interior side yards are 3.74 meters at the west side yard and 2.08 meters at the east side yard. The west side yard is compliant and does not require relief. The east side yard, although deficient, is very minimal in its discrepancy with what is required and continues to maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw as mentioned in the report. After the writing of the report, comments were received from some of our internal and external agencies. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems commented that they have no issue with the minor variance as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. And the Kawartha Conservation Authority commented that they have no concern with the approval of the application and that the applicant has already obtained the necessary approvals. As such, no permit is required from them. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shahid. Questions of the planner? A quiet group today. All right, is the applicant here? Does the applicant, or here online, does the applicant wish to speak? It would appear they are not. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Committee. Ms. Richardson. As printed. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson. Further comments or questions with the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Wherever you are, your application is approved. Okay, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-067, and this is 3 West Street South, former village of Fenelon Falls. Go ahead, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. Under the Fenelon Falls secondary plan, the property is designated commercial, and under the Village of Fenelon Falls zoning bylaw 89-25, the property is zoned district commercial zone. The subject property is located on the western boundary of the Village of Fenelon Falls, surrounded by commercial and residential uses. The property contains a single detached dwelling and detached garage constructed in 1962, as well as the shipping container. The shipping container is temporary to be used during the construction process, which is permitted under Section 5.24 of the zoning bylaw. The proposal is to construct an addition onto the existing dwelling. This proposal requires relief and permission under Sections 45.1 and 45.2 of the Planning Act. Relief is required under 45.1 to recognize the proposed deficient setbacks for the addition, and permission is required under Section 45.2 to permit the enlargement and extension of a legal nonconforming use, as a single detached dwelling is not permitted as of right in the district commercial zone. The dwelling was constructed in 1962, so it has existed and been used for residential purposes since before the bylaw was passed on November 20th, 1989. In accordance with Section 45.2A1, the committee may approve the enlargement or extension of a building or structure if it was lawfully used for a purpose prohibited by the bylaw continuously before the day the bylaw was passed. Therefore, the applicant is proposing a building enlargement and extension of the use to the legal nonconforming building. Under the Fenelon Falls secondary plan, a variety of commercial and tourism uses are permitted within the commercial designation. The City of Kawartha Lake's official plan continues to provide policy framework as well as the goals, policies, and objectives for development in the city. As per the official plan, nothing in the plan shall prevent the use of any land, building, or structure for the purpose prohibited by this plan if the land, building, or structure was lawfully used for that purpose on the date this plan was adopted by council. The residential use on the property has been established since at least 1962, predating the official plan and the Fenelon Falls secondary plan. This slide shows the existing dwelling as well as the abutting properties to the southeast and northwest. The surrounding area is comprised of large and small scale commercial uses, higher density residential uses, and lower density residential uses similar to the subject property. The continuation of the residential use on this property is in keeping with the existing built form, uses, and character of the surrounding area. The continuation of the residential use and the enlargement of the existing dwelling are not anticipated to impact neighboring properties, environmental features, or the function of the municipal right-of-way. Under Section 45.1 of the Planning Act, relief is required from Section 4.10.3C1 of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 12 meters. The proposed setback is 4.7 meters. Section 4.10.3C4 of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 12 meters. The proposed setback is 7.1 meters. And Section 4.10.3E of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum setback from the street center line of 22 meters. The proposed setback is 14.7 meters. The proposed addition is to be in line with the existing dwelling and will encroach into the front yard setback and street center line setback no further than what exists today. The gravel shoulder at the edge of the traveled portion of the road provides physical separation. It is not anticipated that the construction of an addition at this proposed setback will result in impacts to traffic, road maintenance, or sight lines. It's also unlikely the municipality would pursue road widenings in this vicinity given the reduced lot sizes that would result, and due to the fact that there are buildings and structures within the street centerline setback area. These photos were taken in the rear yard of the subject property. The dwelling currently has a rear yard setback of 8.2 meters. As such, the proposal results in minimal encroachment beyond what exists today. The rear lot line of the subject property abuts a property that contains an 8-unit apartment building separated by a fence and mature vegetation, as seen in the photo on the right. The apartment building is 2 stories, so the proposed 1-story addition to the subject dwelling will not result in any negative massing impacts to the neighboring property. After the writing of the report, Kawartha Region Conservation Authority provided that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance so long as a karst assessment is completed as part of their permitting process. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. The owner of the gas station next to the subject property contacted planning to seek clarification on the proposal and to ask which side of the dwelling the addition is to go on. So I did speak with him. I explained the proposal and that the addition is going on the southeast side of the dwelling, so not adjacent to the gas station. And he had no further questions or concerns on that, and then no other comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Ms. Richardson, go ahead.
Should we note through the conditions the KRCA requirement?
Through the chair, I did ask KRCA, we got their comments yesterday evening, so I asked them this morning if they thought a condition should be required, but they said no because it's a requirement for their permitting process, so they'll make sure it happens when they give them the permit.
Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here? Oh, Mr. DeBoer. Would you state your name for us, sir, for the record?
It's Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting, and I'm just here if there's any additional questions, concerns. Otherwise, I'm going to thank the staff for this one. It was a little bit of a challenging one, trying to find the historical data to prove the requirements for this application. So thank you.
Ms. Evans is usually very thorough, so we never have many questions of her. All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Mr. Strang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DeBoer, Kawartha Conservation is asking for, is it a study, the karst development? Could you give us any further details on that?
Sure. As of late, in the change of the mandate from the Conservation Authority, although karst is a potential in our region, if you will, I personally have yet to encounter it in any one of my development sites. However, they've pretty much mandated it on any application that we would be exposed to where we have the limestone and the shale mix. There is a potential for karst topography. So there is a study that accompanies our permit process that we use a geotechnical engineer to perform.
Is that an expensive study for the homeowner? Is it fairly straightforward? Does it take long?
They range between $2,500 and $5,000 depending on the size of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from committee? Thank you, sir. Very much appreciated. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Ms. Archer? Seconded by Mr. Finn. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. The application is approved. All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-068, and this is 64 Telecom Road, Geographic Township of Manners. Mr. Shahi, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in the former township of Manvers with access from Telecom Road. The property currently contains a 1 3/4 story single-family dwelling, a shed, and chicken coop that's not currently in use. The proposed application seeks to facilitate the construction of a 2-story detached garage. The proposed detached garage contains parking for personal vehicles with a workshop on the first floor and storage space with an additional workshop space on the second floor. There's no habitable space or rooms proposed. The dwelling is set back deep into the property, more than 120 meters from the front lot line. The existing rear yard, in comparison, is much smaller, with only around 13 meters of space between the dwelling and rear lot line. Situating any structure in the rear yard is quite difficult, especially when also considering access from the existing side yards. As a result, the front yard is really the only space available for situating any larger accessory structure. The front yard and the property as a whole is largely treed in. The image to the right on the slide shows where the proposed garage would be located. The proposed garage would be situated about where the ATV is on the image shown. The property owner is placing the garage in a part of their property that minimizes the amount of tree removal. The detached garage won't be visible from the road or to any of the neighboring lots, reducing concern with height and location and its relation to privacy or perceived views. The applicant had also indicated that the garage is being located closer to the road as some of their vehicles aren't able to drive up the slope of the property during the winter. So the garage allows them to store these vehicles closer to the road for this purpose. Given that the proposed garage is 2 stories and the existing dwelling is not a full 2 stories, this may be perceived as a concern. However, the height of the proposed detached garage is still less and therefore subordinate to that of the existing dwelling. Additionally, it is notable that garages with multiple stories or more stories than the primary dwelling are not uncommon in this area. A representative example that was found through the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation is the property directly to the north of the subject property, 67 Telecom Road, which features a 2-story detached garage and a dwelling with fewer than 2 stories. After the writing of the report, comments were received from some of our agencies. The supervisor of Part 8, Sewage Systems, commented that they have no issues with the proposal for the minor variance as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. The Kawartha Conservation Authority commented that they have no concern with the approval of the application and that a permit will be required from them for the proposal. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Mr. Erickson?
Just for information, does the city have an arborist that would go look at the property, given that they're taking out some vegetation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not that I know of. We also don't currently have a tree bylaw in place that would restrict anyone from removing any trees.
Anything further from committee? Is the applicant here? Is the applicant or online?
Yes, I am.
Your name, please?
Michelle Crosby.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Crosby.
I don't have any questions for you. I was just listening.
All right. Well, let's see if the committee have any questions of you. They don't. Looks like it's your easy day.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? Support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Everyone's happy today. I have a mover. Okay, Mr. Strangway, and a second on Mr. Erickson. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? That carries. Your application is approved, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-069, and this is 30 Birchwood Lane, Geographic Township of Fenland. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. This property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned limited service residential zone under the Township of Fenland zoning bylaw 12-95. The property is within an established residential neighborhood located on the southern shore of Balsam Lake. It contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1955, a cabin, and a boathouse. As per condition 3, the cabin, as seen in this photo, is to be removed in order to facilitate the proposal, which is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling. Oh my goodness. Apologies. Relief is required from section 15.2.1.3a of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback is 6.4 meters. Section 15.2.1.3b2 of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on one side and 2.3 meters on the other side for a dwelling greater than 1 story. The proposed setback from the southern interior lot line is 1.2 meters. And section 15.2.1.3e of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The proposed setback is 10.2 meters. These elevations give an idea of what the new dwelling is to look like, with views of the front, the side, and the back of the proposed dwelling. These photos show the existing dwelling and the view of the area across the road from the subject property. The dwelling that exists today that's to be demolished has an approximately 0 meter setback from the front lot line, so the proposed dwelling will be an improvement from the current circumstance. The diagonal nature of the front lot line results in different setbacks from the northern corner of the dwelling than the southern. While at its closest point, the front yard setback is to be 6.4 meters. From the southern corner of the dwelling, it's approximately 11.5 meters. It is not anticipated that the proposed location of the dwelling will impact traffic flow, the performance of road maintenance, or sightlines. These photos show the existing side yard setback from the southern lot line. The existing setback is approximately 0.9 meters. So the proposed dwelling will improve upon this setback. The 1.2 meter setback will allow for access between the front and rear yard, as will the 5.7 meter interior side yard setback on the opposite side of the dwelling to the northern lot line. The proposed setback is not anticipated to impact lot drainage and will provide sufficient space for carrying out any required building maintenance on the side of the dwelling. Negative impacts to massing and privacy are not anticipated. Both the official plan and the zoning bylaw establish a minimum water setback, the intention being to provide a buffer, as well to protect water body health and habitat. The proposed dwelling is set back 16.7 meters from the shoreline of the subject property, exceeding the minimum water setback. However, the shoreline of the property to the south has been altered to include a boat slip, and the water setback is measured there because it is the closest point to the new development being proposed on the subject property. Compared to the existing dwelling, the new dwelling will minimally encroach further into the water setback than what exists today. And the location of the proposed dwelling will not alter existing shoreline conditions or increase the risk associated with natural hazards or as well as impact infiltration. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems reviewed the proposal and has no concerns. No other comments of concern raised by any of the circulated agencies. The owner of the property to the south contacted planning just seeking clarification specifically on the water setback. So I explained that the setback is being measured from the boat slip on the property to the south. And after that conversation, no additional comments or concerns have been received from that neighbor or any other members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the planner? Mr. Eric?
I was just wondering, are the owners being told to move the cabin, demolish it, or are they doing it by choice?
Through the chair, by choice, when they filled out the application form, it was indicated that that was the plan.
Right. Anything further from committee? Is the applicant here? Mr. Dewar, busy man. I'll ask you to state your name again, please.
It's Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting. It's the last one for today, so, from me anyway.
Go ahead, sir.
So, Mr. Erickson, just to follow up on your comment there, in order for the usability and the reconstruction of the property, the client actually chose to remove that accessory structure. It just didn't fit with the whole balance of the property once it's developed. So it definitely was a choice and not a mandated process. And if there's any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Well, let's find out if there are. Are there any questions of the applicant? Oh, Mr. Strand?
Thank you. Mr. Dewar, those are fairly small lots there. Lots of room there for a septic system, no concerns there?
It'll be on a holding tank.
Okay, thanks. I wondered that.
Anything further from committee? All right, thank you, sir. All right, anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application, opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Richardson.
It's recommended by staff.
Mr. Fend, I see your hand there as seconder. All right, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-070, and this is 44 Walnut Street, Geographic Township of Finland. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated on the eastern shore of Fells Bay with access from Walnut Street. The property currently contains a 1-story cottage with a lakeside deck. The application seeks to recognize the existing lakeside deck constructed in 2022. With respect to the front yard setback, this was measured from Walnut Street, which actually runs through the subject property and the properties to the south. The property southeast used the private right-of-way for access, and the subject property is the last property along Walnut Street to use the private right-of-way for access. As such, the private right-of-way ends at the subject property. The existing deck is in line with the deck of the neighboring property, and according to the applicant, the deck was constructed to provide a safer access way to the lake, as the property contains a steep topography towards the water. Looking at the existing interior side yards, both the existing deck and dwelling are deficient with this requirement. Consequently, any attempt to attach a deck to either side of the dwelling while adhering to the side yard requirements would likely result in an irregular or unconventional shape of the deck. The closest point is on the north side yard, which is at 0.55 meters. However, this is the closest point and increases as you move towards the rear yard of the property. Although tight, this is approximately shoulder width and should be sufficient for maintenance purposes. The southern side yard, also deficient, provides an appropriate space for maintenance and access. Regardless, the owners use the deck to navigate from the rear yard to the waterfront and don't go through the open space side yards due to the steep slopes presented. With respect to agency comments received after the report, the supervisor of Part 8 Sewage Systems commented that they have no issue with the proposed minor variance as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal, and no public comments were received. The image on the slide just shows the subject property with its existing deck on the left and the neighboring property to the right with their deck that's currently under construction. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application, subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the planner? Ms. Archer?
Through you, please, to the planner. Is that a shared driveway?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think the applicant had indicated to me that they don't use that driveway anymore. But yeah, technically that would be a shared driveway.
Is 1.17 meters sufficient to get some piece of equipment through to the front yard without going on the neighbor's property?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I believe the setback that was there, 1.17 meters or so, is sufficient. I don't really have any concerns with that.
Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here or online? Wishing to speak to the applicant? Yes, sir. And your name, sir? You haven't got the red light yet. Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. Your name?
Thank you. So my name is Avi Bensby, and I have no comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions the committee has, and I thank you very much for your time.
Well, and thank you for yours, sir. Are there any questions of the applicant? Yes, Ms. Archer?
Through you to the applicant. That is a shared laneway, or do you own all of that laneway?
No, that's a shared laneway, and it's big enough to get trucks and maintenance past that shared laneway. We use the back of it to park. So my neighbor and I share the lot. It's a right of way, and the road kind of goes up into the back, and that's where people usually park.
Any further questions of the applicant? All right, thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Mr. Strangway.
As recommended by staff.
Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Your application's approved, sir.
Thank you so much. You made
my
day. Appreciate it. God bless you guys.
All right, now dealing with file number D20-2024-071, and this is 211 Francis Street, Geographic Township of Fenland. Ms. Evans, you're on.
Thank you. The subject property is designated residential under the Fenland Falls Secondary Plan and is zoned Rural Residential Type 2 zone under the Township of Fenland zoning bylaw 12-95. The subject property is within an established residential neighborhood located on the eastern shore of the Fenland River. However, it is not a waterfront lot. It currently contains a 2-story single detached dwelling constructed in 1972 and a shed. Under the Fenland Falls Secondary Plan, residential uses are permitted. The property is within the floodplain hazard, within which an environmental impact study or other appropriate study may be required for development proposals. As per the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan, the city, in consultation with partner agencies, shall identify the appropriate scope and study area for a required EIS. Based on the location of the proposed development, staff are of the opinion that a study is not required. Based on the secondary plan schedule, it appears that a portion of the property has been identified as containing significant woodlands. The secondary plan provides that development may be permitted adjacent to environmental features when that development is compatible. The proposed attached garage is outside of the significant woodlands area, and the property is already developed. As such, it is not anticipated that the addition will result in negative impacts to an environmental feature. The proposal is to construct an attached garage onto the existing dwelling. The garage will provide additional storage opportunities on the property as well as more space for covered parking. As the existing shed is currently in the location of the proposed garage, it will be relocated further south to facilitate the construction. Relief is needed from section 12.2.1.3D of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback is 2.4 meters. These photos show the location of the proposed garage as well as the front of the existing dwelling. The intent of locating the garage on the south side of the dwelling is to locate it adjacent to the existing driveway and the existing attached garage. There is limited space on the north side of the dwelling for an addition that could comply with minimum interior side yard setbacks. The property is irregular in shape as the rear lot line juts towards the interior of the lot at the southeast side of the dwelling, which makes compliance with the minimum rear yard setback quite challenging. As seen on the air photo here, the rear lot line of the subject property abuts a property that is approximately 5.6 hectares in size, and the dwelling on that property, represented by the yellow dot, is approximately 175 meters from the location of the proposed attached garage, represented by the red dot. The lots are separated by a stand of mature vegetation, as seen in the photo on the right. It is not anticipated that the proposed rear yard setback will result in land use or privacy impacts between the subject property and the abutting property. Well, the configuration of the rear lot line and the location of the existing dwelling limits the amount of amenity space that's available in the rear yard. The property has sufficient amenity space in the front yard as well as the interior side yards. And the front yard of the property can be seen in this photo here. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems reviewed the proposal and has no concerns with the minor variance as it relates to on-site sewage disposal. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner, Mr. Finn?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell us the rear yard setback of the existing building?
Through the chair, I will look at that right now on their application form, if you'll just give me a moment. Through the chair, the existing rear yard setback is 3.54 meters.
Thank you.
Anything further of the planner? Being none, and I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of questions with this applicant. Is the applicant here? Do you wish to speak to the application?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no comments.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Being none, your easy day. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Mr. Strangway.
As recommended.
Do I have a seconder? Mr. Finn, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? That carries. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Well, that's got to be record timing today, given the fact that we are dealing with 9 applications, but oh well. No deferred applications. All right, no consents. Under other business, anything from staff under other business? Nothing. My God. Okay, Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
I was wondering, when the planners are using the pointer, it's on that screen. There are no pointers on these screens. Can the people online see where the pointer is pointing to?
Actually, that's a good point. Anyway.
Because we here don't know where they're pointing, at least when I'm sitting on this side of the table. On that side, I can see it.
I know, good question. Did anyone have an answer?
Thank you. Yeah, we have run into that before where sometimes we do use the pointer, and we've talked about it with Charlotte. And if we point to this one and she can see it, we think she can use the mouse on her computer and it will show up on YouTube. But we are trying to not use the pointer as much by using like lines or putting dots on the screen or using different colors so we can verbally talk about it instead of having to rely on the pointer. Sometimes we do if it's to answer a question or something, but if we do need it, then I think we can point at this one and we'll do the cursor and we'll just let Charlotte know to try and follow us. We think they'll be able to see Charlotte's mouse when she moves her mouse around and see her little arrow. We think so. Yeah, I think what they are seeing is what's on the TV.
Say it's much nicer to look at the screen up here, the fullness of the color, rather than sometimes it's very difficult because of the fogginess on these screens. People at home can see the pictures and plans and so forth. Okay.
No, your point is well made. I think it's an excellent question, and the graphics, I think, for lack of a better term, let's call them that, the dots that you talked about, or the framing sometimes that you put in, that really helps. So I think I mentioned before that we do appreciate you doing that. So anything further from committee? Mr. Rich?
I'd read yesterday online about the provincial planning statement that's coming into effect soon, and I just wondered if that was going to have any effect on this committee.
Mr. Connolly?
Thank you, through your chair, to the member. Actually, there's a lot to be digested through that. So there's the elimination of the growth plan. What the province had done in a number of different iterations was taking different versions of the provincial policy statement, kind of prefer to have this one pass as opposed to one that was proposed in 2023. I think one of the things we'll have to take a look at is all in that final form, just exactly what will be the nuts and bolts of that. I don't foresee, there's no elimination of committee of adjustment or anything like that, but there will be around notices, things like that. The growth plan is being eliminated. I shed a bit of a tear because I was one of the original people who worked on that team, but at the same time, you know, the new PPS incorporates some of the significant elements of the growth plan into that. And for the City of Kawartha Lakes, that's actually a positive thing because some of those policies and provisions didn't really fit in the City of Kawartha Lakes and some of the what they called the outer ring municipalities. So I think in some ways it'll be a benefit in that respect. And again, a focus on development, a focus on other options to get development to market quicker. And at the same time, not necessarily compromise environmental protection, things like that. But we will be bringing that forward. There's a commenting period, I believe, for 30 days, and then that will be prior to the actual finalization of October 20th of that new provincial policy statement. I think one of the things, and I'll speak for all the planners here and anyone who's listening, it will be nice to have some stability and consistency. Although it may not be perfect, it would be great to not have shifting sands under our feet every single year as we go forward. So I think we're looking forward to whatever this version is, and we do have versions that we're sort of going through, is working with that and seeing how we can tailor that to how we work at the City of Kawartha Lakes. Thank you.
Actually, an excellent question, because I think your phrase shifting sands probably is a good analogy, because I've listened to some of the and read a bit about it, and you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer to figure it all out. So a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. Anything further from committee? All right. Just a couple of things for me. First of all, Zoe, thank you very much. An excellent job up there. You make the transition from application to application smooth. So I appreciate all your work up there. Thank you. And the other one, Charlotte, is to you, because I've worked with a lot of people over my career, if you want to call it that, I guess, for lack of a better term. But Charlotte, you got to be one of the most organized people I've ever ran into in my life. Honest to God, she makes my life simple up here. Everything's ready. Every time I come in, it's all laid out. And so thank you for that. It's very much appreciated. Job well done. All right, having said all that, I don't think we have anything further, other than, please don't forget that the next meeting's at 2 o'clock. And other than that, a motion to adjourn. Ms. Archer, Mr. Finn, shall we recorded vote? What do you think? All right, all those in favor? And that carries.